Did Studio Ghibli gain value today or lose value today?
They captured like absolutely none of the social and cultural value that their brand and IP have created over the last few days.
I almost started singing Friday by Rebecca Black again, but I realized I've done that 2 or 3 times in a row now, and it's no longer fun.
I don't need to hear that either.
I do love that is a meme that has stuck around in my head for much longer than probably what this sort of the slop on the internet this week will stick around. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we have some opinions on that. All right, we're back with episode. What episode are we on?
I've missed
1 billion. Episode 1 billion of the most popular crypto podcast in the world. That's how you do it, right? That's how the all-in guys do it. Just say that you're popular and eventually become it. I love it.
It worked. Oh my God.
It worked. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, never a dull week. I feel like seems like almost everything else has overshadowed crypto markets this week as the news and the energy is out there. But there's nothing short of a constant stream of interesting things happening in the space. So excited to get into it today. We have Pri from Tribute Labs joining us at the bottom of the hour today to talk about Aiden, the idea of an AI agent disrupting venture capital. I have questions. Are we obsolete here? Are we boomers already holding on to a future that is just not relevant anymore? I mean, the answer is probably yes, but maybe we can explore the nuance there a little bit. And of course, there's just it's crazy. One little model update and the timeline. It's taken over for a little while. The virality of prompts or of styles growing absolutely fascinating.
It was a good update.
Pretty powerful update for sure. And amongst all of that, there's been all these really great thought pieces that people start to explore this idea of value exchange or value distribution to token holders and the idea of buying and burning dividends, all that sort of stuff. And so it feels like a fun time that we're back in sort of the explore mode around these mechanisms at maybe a new level. So we're going to get into that. Is ownership still a valid reason to have a token or a compelling reason to have a token? I think we're going to sort of dive into some of the thinking that Jesse's been sharing on that most recently. And I got a couple things that say drama here. So polymarket drama, hyperliquid drama,
maybe
Nikita drama. We'll see if we can get to it.
Some challenges with crypto drama.
But peace, Mr. Muppet. How you doing, my friend?
Quite good. So
you had some banger tweets yesterday on this topic. I hope you included your link in the topic list today.
I'll drop it in. I'll search myself on Twitter. So I know. Yeah.
That's good. It was good. But you good? Any new? I don't know. Dietary and or health supplement things you're on? I feel like you're on a journey here.
The big dietary thing is the cleanse is over. That is good. I'm trying to stay on decaf, but it's ridiculous, right? So I'm ordering things because I've been conditioned by Starbucks to love a bucket of coffee. So I'm ordering things.
You do big coffees. You like big coffees.
It's like I'm ordering like a quad shot latte decaf. They're looking at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? Like, I know it's about the ratio.
I just like liquid.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it. Yeah. I think if I was to try to make the switch to decaf, which I won't, and if I do, please come save me. I think I would want to maybe up the coffee taste at least a little bit.
I only do decaf after I've had like 6 caffeinated coffees, and I just can't have another one, but want to continue drinking coffee.
See, I'm on like decaf is sacrilegious unless you have a medical ailment perspective.
Or it's like 8 p.m.
I mean, okay, well, you don't need to get into that. Yes, that's probably a good call at 8 p.m. for sure. Nice. Some crypto the game stuff coming out. Let's call that out. I think we got that stuff live. We've got some fun stuff coming out with LDF and Cheryl, who have played crypto the game and documented the whole thing. I've seen some early cuts of it. Those two are unhinged in a delightful way. And so I think that's going to come out next week. Excited to see that come out. So shout out to them and to Ted for winning $150,000. I guess it's not quite that anymore, is it? We down today?
Maybe she swapped.
So sad.
Maybe she swapped. Let's hope she
swapped. That's a Ted dump on us. Oh. Thank you, Ted.
Nice. All right. Well, we got a bunch to get into. Preet's going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour. So let's just jump into it.
Let's go. Yeah, good to be back. I've missed a couple, and it's a good
Oh
harvest.
yeah, you were oh
Dude,
yeah,
honestly,
you were
this
away.
is a bachelor party in Nashville last weekend, and this is the first day I like actually feel fully functioning again. I just can't do it anymore.
You looked
Brutal.
absolutely wrecked on
Fuck,
Monday.
it was bad. It was bad. I powered through though. Still feel like it was a solid week, but I'm excited to not do that again for a while.
Back for sure.
Anyways, yeah, let's jump into. I mean, obviously, like the topic of the week was the new OpenAI image generation model, all the giblification and beyond that was happening, and yeah, I mean, yeah. So they released a new model directly into Chat GPT, and I was playing around with it a bunch. It really feels like a pretty significant step change improvement on anything that existed before, and just like the it's like attention to detail and how like how much you could how broad of a range of styles from graphic design to creative
Well,
ads of physical products to
it actually does what you ask it to do,
it does what
which
you ask
is
it
the
to
thing.
do
Yeah.
for the first time, and you could target specific changes, and it doesn't lose everything else it has. It feels for the first time it feels like you actually have kind of full control over this image generation model, and I think there's a lot to get into here. I think the first thing I want to talk about is just how, and I don't know if this was intentional or not. So during the live stream, they created this Studio Ghibli style image, and it just sent the internet into an absolute frenzy. And I don't know if this was, there must have been some thinking behind it, but I think just this idea of like launching new products alongside hero releases that show people what's possible is critical. And this was just an absolute masterclass in this. And I can only imagine how many, obviously they took over the timeline. Can only imagine how many signups it actually drove to the product of people wanting to giblify themselves and do other stuff. So I think just like kind of pausing for a moment on how intentionally or not that smart that launch was. Maybe would have happened regardless, but
yeah, I mean, our servers are melting was sort of the message afterwards, as people were just going crazy with it. So PMF example, I guess, in a new release. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was funny even to see Sam sort of jump in with some of his tweets afterwards. Makes me think that he probably was sort of on the inside of that. Like there was some intentionality behind it. Kind of an interesting style to choose given the sort of history and politics of the creator. So maybe that was purposeful or not. I don't know. It's kind of like, I go.
Has to
I mean, I
be.
think, yeah, because what the reality is, and we were just talking about this before, right? The idea of like distribution or attention on the internet, and I think we were just seeing like and have known for a long time that just extreme takes or those that are, I guess cause debate are the things that travel through the internet. And so running at whether it's the White House or it's the OpenAI running right at something they know there's going to be some controversy around is very clearly a good media strategy from like as long as you're
some of the most like kind of unique, nostalgic, loved IP out there from a creator who is openly anti-AI, very intense. Like they don't produce a ton of content. They release, I don't know what their kind of backlog looks like, but it's pretty rare that a new Studio Ghibli movie comes out. So yeah, it was set up to go crazy.
Feels set up. Yeah,
it feels set up. But yeah, I think it sparked a lot of conversations around whether this is net good or bad for Studio Ghibli. I think it's pretty obvious. I think two things are pretty obvious. Like one, it's pretty obvious that today it's net good. They got a huge increase in awareness, likely a surge in streams. Millions of new people are probably primed to care about their next movie. But also they captured like absolutely none of the social and cultural value that their brand and IP have created over the last few days. And OpenAI captured a ton of it. Twitter, captured a bunch of it through increased engagement and attention on it. And of course, there are a bunch of meme coins and stuff that that ran to pretty reasonable market caps on the backs of it. So yeah, I mean that just continues to be just an open question here. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I think so. I just dropped a tweet in the chat here, a piece from Aaron that I think is sort of talking about this. I think Jacob has been out talking about two people who've been, very much on the forefront of, the exploration of how tokens, specifically or crypto, are maybe valuing IP, if you will. It's probably brought culture, creativity in some way, and I think like there's sort of this open question of like, well, yeah. So Aaron right here says, how do we prevent the mimification of media, build a scarce set of non-fungible assets that act as a store of mimetic value? Right? So he's arguing that, in an alternate world where Studio Ghibli had 1,000, 10,000, NFT collection out there, that a lot of that value would sort of be, bid up there, and that they may capture it. I think Jacob's making a similar argument in the way sort of, I think somebody was calling out that the sort of short time line of or staying power of some of these memes, and it sort of makes the argument that coins or cryptos actually just sort of valuing attention, and that these things are almost always very short-lived, and so you'll see it, and so it's almost making legible the perception of value in a way that just hasn't been before. But yeah, I think this is a core question that we are interested in, right? This idea of the social capital that exists out there, that our current corporate structures, IP structures just don't capture the full value of. And I think you often talk about it in the terms of sports teams, and thinking about the value they get from merch sales and those such of deals versus what a token might capture. And I think the challenge is there's big question marks around all of that, and around the sort of the right mechanisms to go do it. But I've been talking about this forever for the last 6 months. I think the reality is people can go run at it a lot more directly right now. And so I think we should, I think I tweeted earlier this week, I think, there's one or two sort of shifts, whether it comes out of the Market Structures Act or it's a carve out or something, that I think could really be an ignition point again for interest in NFTs. And maybe this is as well. I mean, I think Story Protocol was out trying to make an argument that Story would have made a big difference there. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think really interesting vein to be mining.
Totally. I have pretty big conviction that the lunch break there on the Japanese stock exchange lunch break is so funny. I think they're like kind of two. I don't know. Crypto's clearly well suited to solve this in some way. Like you have two sides of the coin, right? You have one, it's like Studio Ghibli or their IP should be tokenized in some way, and as these attention spikes happen, attention's going to go there. That's like the shelling point for this thing, and people can go speculate on the asset, and hopefully they capture some value from that. And then you have the story approach, which is a much more kind of structured, direct approach at it, where it's like you put your IP on chain, makes it seamless for AI companies to license IP rights and pay out creators on generations, and you kind of have these smart contracts tied to these legal rights and blah blah blah. You take kind of the more direct approach. I think if I were to bet, I think this kind of looser tokenized approach is going to win, because I just find it very, very hard to see AI companies opting into this kind of story protocol world, and we're going to have open source models, and just forcing these companies to like pay on generation just seems like it's never going to happen. Also, like Studio Ghibli would have never opened it up anyway, so they would have kept it closed down, so someone's going to bypass that. So just I find it hard to see a world where something like story protocol wins in this kind of chaotic internet land. But I think story's increasingly making more sense to me now that like I understand the problem they're solving, and their approach to the solution. Like before, I tweeted this morning, like before we had Spotify, we had Napster, right? And ultimately, because of the Napster was free, but the convenience of Spotify and kind of regulation ultimately led Spotify to winning. But
but I'm not sure that's the same thing. I think the difference is there are like 3 to 5 rights holders that you need to go get on board to sort of own the relationship, and thus be the place for streaming, and there's just no way that you're going to have the ability to sort of aggregate all that interest in IP, in my personal opinion. And so I don't know, maybe they get some good traction in a category, which is probably the place to start. We'll see. I mean, I think to me, the blockchain, or whichever blockchain you choose to use, is kind of the platform for this. And, but I think where, there's a debate around, should be Story very opinionated, Ethereum not opinionated. How opinionated do you need to be to actually build the trust and connection with those IP holders? So there, I think there is an argument there that people they like the sense of more control over their thing, even if it is sort of just the sense and maybe not the reality of it. But I love just being sort of part of these moments where the figuring out is happening, right? And maybe that's obviously been the last 10 years, 12 years in crypto, but it's felt very, very in this specific cultural, social capital world, very relevant over the last 6 months. We seem to be speed running these sort of modes very quickly.
Totally. It's also interesting just all the kind of cultural dialogue that's been happening as well. Just as, I think the internet's always been full of slop, but every day like these things come out and suddenly like the internet feels more like culturally compressed and uniform than it ever has before. And I think if you pull up Reggie's tweet, I liked his take here at the end where he was like, the dead internet theory is actually going to win. The dead internet theory is like that the majority of internet activity is actually bots, not real humans. And he says the dead internet theory is going to win, not because bots are taking over, but because we actually just become indistinguishable from bots. And I think someone in a reply here was talking about how, creativity needs struggle, and it's getting harder and harder to actually have to struggle to create stuff. And we're actually just going to get to this point where no one is actually creating anything new, or very few people are creating anything new, and we're just in this constant kind of like remix culture. But
I just don't buy that.
I don't buy that either. But it's interesting to just be in these moments where literally all the feed was
yeah. Well, I think that's very real. I just think that the reality is that none of these things are static, right? And I think you see it all, whether that's in the political yo-yo back and forth between extremes, or that's in sort of like what people are looking for. I think that as soon like the speed of sort of the use of that format, and then also the disdain for that format was just quite palpable, right? And so I think we're just going to have these sort of I guess it's bouncing back and forth between, as soon as we get too far, if we speed run the idea, the homogeneity of certain content, the response to that will also be swift in the opposite direction.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I really would argue that we've been in a remix culture since like 2005.
Matthew Fox just replied to the stream with, "We're 2,000 years into remix culture."
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But I guess I really mean, so it's like, how do you avoid remix culture? But I would say from a culturally dominant perspective, it's like we haven't made, as far as music and movies go, since the mid 2000s, I don't think that there are defining things that aren't references to prior generations. In music, in movies, in culture, maybe like skinny jeans, I would say it was like the last update. I don't know if those existed in the 19th century even, but it's like, I think that AI is actually the path to getting something new. It's just that you have to have a Ghibli stepping stone marketing moment.
I mean, maybe the bull case is that we're just speed running trends. So now, 2 days later, everyone's sick of Ghibli, and it's actually harder to create something new that stands out, but people crave it and desire it more. So the opportunity is higher.
Yeah. It's like, will novelty be more or less appealing in the future?
More, of course.
Yeah. And so I think
will we have more tools to create more novel things? Yes.
Yeah. And I think, like this enduring, I guess, how long those sort of moments last, I think will decrease. And I mean, I think this is the dynamic we have here is what happens when networks take over from, the physical world in some way, right? Where you just have this like immediate distribution, and like the virality is just that turned up to 100, and and then it can, I think it just disappears just as fast. Yeah. I'm over it, frankly.
I'm over it.
I like this. This is a great question from Matt Dryhurst. Did Studio Ghibli gain value today or lose value today? And it's not that's way closer than I would have thought.
Same.
Because my vote was the same as your vote piece. But I do think that there is, I guess value is a subjective question. I think a lot of people have seen a devaluation of maybe what they deeply like there. Yeah, this is.
I think Studio Ghibli gained value, but the opportunity for the next one is maybe smaller.
Right. That's interesting.
This is Piece's tweet. I am enjoying seeing all of the AI generated art made by all of you. I have no problem with the state of Israel. Keep it up, Ghibli fans. Hayao Miyazaki.
I saw this on Instagram like by the end of the night, and I was like, man, people are so wonderful. Like it just the amount of confusion that that AI is going to give us, I think, is rocket fuel for something new that I'm really excited about.
I love that take. All right, let's move on.
Let's move on.
Let us move on
to buy and burns. So Masari, talked about buy and burn for a while. I think obviously you see some critique of it, but I think pretty unanimously people are supportive of protocols making revenue and buying and burning. So it was interesting to see Masari come out with a piece today, kind of making the bear case for buys and burns. So the two kind of core pieces they leaned into in the article was that revenue growth and narrative formation are actually the core drivers of price action, not buy and burns. And then they really talked about kind of how the bad management of them that typically exists right now. So typically it's kind of systematic and programmatic and just kind of broadly happens regardless of market conditions, economic activity of the network, kind of, longer term trend. So typically these protocols are buying more when revenue is good and prices are high. And then they don't actually reserve any cash for when prices are low, revenue's bad, and you actually need to invest in figuring out where the hell you're going next. So in the post, they ultimately kind of advocate for focusing on investing in growth and ultimately paying out distributions in stables and majors instead of buying and burning. But I really liked Tushar's reply to it piece, if you can pull it up, because I think this is pretty much my perspective as well. That let me just read it here. Yeah, if you can productively reinvest in growth, you should do that first. But there isn't always an opportunity to invest in growth. If you have an excess of cash, you can't productively reinvest. You should return it to token holders. If you're going to return capital to token holders, buybacks are strictly superior to dividends because of tax code. So I think a lot of this too is just, you can't just blindly say buy and burns or dividends are good or bad. It's very dependent on the stage of the project and cycle conditions. Like if you're, if you just freshly launched a token and you're looking for product market fit, like using your low cash reserves to buy back and burn your token, it's probably not a good play. But if you're, this protocol with product market fit, kind of sustainable growing revenue, network effects have kicked in, you're 8 years into the vision, you're a category leader, then it can probably make more sense. So
yeah, somebody had a really great article on X that I thought I had saved, but I don't have here. And it was really actually looking at public companies and their use of buybacks and dividends and sort of by stage and by industry.
Piece, open up the decentralized.co.
That's what it was. Thank you. Yeah,
I think their recent article had a good graphic on that.
Yeah, and I think that of course, with all these things, there's so much more nuance in them, and it's good that we as an industry are kind of starting to explore that. I think there's two big ways that's happening right now around stablecoins and yield and monetary supply, which I think has been fascinating to read about, and then the sort of broader question of how to return, theoretically, that we are now able to return value back to token holders. What is the best way to go do it? And I think just the pure programmatic nature of buy burns is maybe like the least ideal way to go. Like you probably want to, if you're rich in cash, maybe either investment or dividend or not using your native token if your native token is super low and you have a bunch of money. Incentives maybe are better done with a USDC or some of that revenue. Or on the flip side, if token price is really low and you feel like it's undervalued, the idea of buying and burning probably makes a ton of sense. And I think, a similar way that corporations sort of view how to manage their revenues or profits. And I think this post on decentralized.co is really great.
Yeah, please go down. I think it's close to the bottom. Scroll. Oh, that one, the colorful one. Go up
a little bit.
That one.
Yeah, so it's an image, profit sharing practices across company lifestyles, and the youngest, the sort of the bottom decile. Most are losing money. Less than 20% are paying dividends, and about 28% are buying back their stock. And if you go to the other extreme, the oldest, top decile, only 17% are losing money, but there are 78% and 82% that are offering dividends and buying and burning stock. And so, I think we just have this deep habit of trying to programmatically or prescriptively design these systems that are just going to work forever, be decentralized, that, and there's just a big trade-off that gets made. And I think capital efficiency, operational efficiency, these things are clear trade-offs. And, for certain products, it's probably essential, but it's, I think, maybe just copying and pasting those ideas without the insights behind them is probably a bad move. But there's also like a big question of, of the legality of all of this sort of stuff. And, if you look at kind of the comments on the market structure or recommendations for it, there is still, A16Z very pushing a very clear definition of what decentralized is. And I think it's, probably more broad than what we might have said, in past years, but it also is still trying to be very clear around the importance of decentralization to the question of whether something is a security or not. And so, the centralized team making decisions on how or when to, distribute profits, where does that land in this new Market Structures Act? Is that probably like the ideal way to go about it if you trust that team? But, might not fit the definitions that are being pushed today.
Yeah, totally. I do like how Jupiter's handled it so far. I think what they said when they launched their token was that they're going to initiate buybacks and burns once they've 10x their user growth. So because I think it is important for narratives as well, right? Like people,
100%.
People buying tokens related to protocols want to know that there's some economic alignment between the token and the business success of that protocol. So I think the absence of that, or saying you're never going to do that, is a pretty strong negative for your narrative. But I don't think people care that it's happening today. They more just want to know that
it's a great call.
If I believe in this protocol and I'm holding this long term, I'm going to be rewarded for it.
Yeah, I think and let's make sure we shout out the author of this, because you're going to scroll back up. Piece, we know who it is. It is by, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. Sarab. I think it makes a very good point around, arguing why dividends aren't ideal. Teshar's making an argument around the tax code. I'm not smart enough or connected enough there to know how that works, also being Canadian. But the other is sort of the expectations, right? And the idea that in the traditional markets, if you have a dividend, the market is then going to expect that you have a dividend. And cutting that dividend is a very meaningful negative narrative moment. And so, yeah, Jupiter's probably got threading the needle correctly here. It's like we are going to invest in growth until we are like just dominant, and then we're very committed to buying and burning. I mean, all this is such, so new. I was like looking at like where are the tokens and protocols that have meaningful revenue that I might get exposure to, and it's not a large list today.
Yeah, like 10, maybe 20 if you stretch your imagination a bit.
Yeah, I think the long tail of teams that are making that promise is, I think, growing, but they often don't really have meaningful revenues coming through, and so it's not interesting. And on the flip side, there's a lot of value and market caps out there that aren't really making money. So there's a bit of a messy middle here.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to. Do we have Pre's coming soon? But we can maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be on in a minute. Let's just jump in and we can pull
this
her up.
Jesse tweet. So this was a good tweet from Jesse. I think not a ton new for people who pay attention to us from the top part, but kind of highlighted the variant thesis of ownership as a keystone of the user experience and their potential to bootstrap networks bigger and faster. And he outlined two kind of like core properties of the project where this works really well. One is when it's connected to a movement people want to participate in, or when it's connected to a product that people love and intuitively want to own. Obviously, ideally both. But I think the thing I did like that he called out here at the bottom was how he was talking about how deep in, and I think a lot of infra falls into this. It's kind of in this uncanny valley where it doesn't have either. So it can be effective to, bootstrap networks. Obviously you can, pay whatever incentives you need to pay to actually get people to join and start using your product, but to have long-term sustainable kind of value accrual to your token, and for people to want to hold it long-term, you ideally need one of those two. And I do think the one thing that he maybe missed was, I think there's a third one that, if the token's economically aligned with a great and growing business, I think you can not have either of the two, and you're going to have strong demand for that token. But I think in this like network bootstrapping phase, it's critical to have people care?
Yeah, I mean, this. Do you love your infrastructure? And the answer, I mean, it has been yes, right? Like the cult like fervor around Solana, around Ethereum, and the maximalism there around Bitcoin.
But I think because they've actually tapped into number one pretty effectively.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair,
Whereas
I feel that way about Verizon Wireless. Like, not a fucking chance in hell would you catch me using T-Mobile or like Spectrum. Same towers, but like I'm not gonna use Spectrum. I'm a fucking Verizon user, yo.
That is a wild bit of insight piece. Absolutely wild.
I don't think I'm alone either.
I mean, we only have two options up here, and they're both so.
Yeah, right.
Two options, same towers.
Right.
Same towers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess how do you sort of, does infra need to be consumer facing ultimately in some way, whether that is with an app or that is just in the motion and sort of like the promotion of the network and the token, to actually have sort of this connection that will create that sort of ownership value in these things. And I think the answer is for the vast majority is hell no, and then some will be able to sort of navigate it. But also, that it's much more difficult today in the sort of the airdrop meta that was sort of a good way to spark network effects. When there wasn't 40 million tokens, there was 5 million tokens. I think reduced in value quite significantly, and so you need to do more to make that connection, etc.
Yeah. 100%. Should we get Pri up here?
I will say, to me, I was this. Yes, we'll pull Pri up here in a second. But to me, this, I think regularly, usually when the charts are red, I get to test my conviction in things, right? And to me, this is the thing that makes me get out of bed every morning. And I think it's interesting to see how much it has been lost in the current sort of metas, right? Like the institutions are coming and stablecoins, and to me, like the democratization of access to these companies, these missions, these protocols is the thing. And it's not the only thing in crypto, but that's like my thing in crypto. And so
it's funny. I started writing a post kind of re-underwriting my excitement for crypto this week. Kind of had the same experience. I was like, I feel like I need to go back to basics and and really tease out why I'm here again. And I think for me, and hopefully I'll share the post next week, but for me, it was really this idea of like a dramatically more interesting internet. And I think what you're talking is a core part of that.
Nice. Well, we have Pri from Shibit Labs here with us. Hello, Pri.
How are your Cheetos?
They're really good. Thank you. I crushed it, actually.
It's a very reasonably sized bag.
Yeah. It's like a healthy, portion control way of eating Cheetos.
The 100-calorie Cheeto bag?
160.
Okay.
Not bad.
But I think Cheetos are about to be outlawed, aren't they? You're just not allowed to have orange food color and stuff now. So get your Cheetos now. Stock up.
Dude, yeah, that's why I'm like trying to eat them as quickly as possible before they take it away. Before the man takes it away. Yeah.
The wall on the other side of Pri's camera is just a vending machines full of Cheetos. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome to have you, Pri. I mean, you're one of the absolute earliest people in the Seed Club world. Obviously, Tribute has done some incredible things with notable DAOs like Flamingo and the Lao and many, many others. And so there's tons to talk about there if we wanted to, but then you guys decided to go on and try to disrupt my job. And so I feel like maybe that's the right thing to jump into. So I don't know if you want to maybe introduce what you guys are working on and then Aiden, and we can get into it.
Yeah, totally. Hey everyone, thanks for having me. So I guess just kind of quick background on Tribute too. So we've supported and been a service provider for a bunch of for-profit investment DAOs, as you noted, like the Lao, Flamingo, 20 plus others. And basically what that means is we provided, the operational support, so tax, legal, accounting, compliance, all of that, community support, all of that kind of core nitty gritty stuff, so that the members of our DAOs who primarily want to talk to each other, talk to founders, invest in cool companies are able to do that, so they don't have to deal with all kind of the more like operational heft. And so we've been doing that now for several years. I think our DAOs have performed really well as far as just return, but even just like community, you know, we've had members individually invest in a bunch of companies. We've had members invest in, you know, other funds like together. They've started funds together. We've had, you know, people go into business together. So it's been like this fun thing where we've seen the community emerge in all these different directions. And, you know, many of the projects early on, like many of the DAO members ended up, you know, creating projects either after or during it. And it's just like a great kind of group of people. But you know, that said, there's still like a lot of just human bottlenecks, I guess you could say. Like you still have, you know, a lot of that. And in many ways, like a lot of these DAOs that we have had beyond even just the Tribute Lab supported DAOs is like they're more like decentralized organizations as opposed to decentralized autonomous organizations. And so something that like, you know, our team, Aaron, have been really thinking about is like since OpenAI came out and ChatGPT was available, we immediately jumped on that. I think it was like November, like 2.5 years ago that was released, and we immediately started using it in the DAOs to, you know, help the operational efficiencies. But increasingly, the thought was, you know, why not use machine intelligence? Because this is the worst it's ever going to be. So like machine intelligence can really go far beyond just like helping summarize things and doing some odds and ends. For DAOs, it can actually kind of be at the center and more humans at the edges, kind of similar to the Vitalik blog post actually recent, where like with AI, there's always going to be humans at the edges, and that is our same thinking with that. And so that's really why we built Aiden. It's the structure is a little bit different around Aiden compared to the other DAOs, but it's also you know, really highlighting machine intelligence at the middle. In the middle, I'm happy to kind of demo it. I don't know. Can I screen share on this?
God,
Or no?
we're not exactly set up.
Could you send it to Peace?
It's like it's a private thing right now.
Nah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll explain it.
Yeah.
And you're kind of on the site now too, so maybe like I can walk through the how it works section, which is just underneath here, if you scroll down. But really, like, so our DAOs right now are more like closed systems. So you have like 50 to 70 members. They bring in the deal flow. They have the weekly conversations, and then they have on-chain votes on what to invest in or talk to projects along the way. And it's worked really well, as I noted. But this structure is a little bit different, where because you have Aiden in the middle, being able to synthesize any company website or deck and create like a 30-page report. And then we have 5 agents that basically crawl the report and make a decision. So these agents are, you know, the monopoly maker, which is more of like the Peter Thiel type of agent. We have the value guy, which is this boomer type of agent, more focused on value. We have the unit master, who's primarily focused on the finances of a business and growth. We have the network guy, which is someone who's really the investor that's focused really on like creating network effects. And then the last one is, let me pull it up really quickly. The last agent is the tech oracle. So really focused on like what's going on with early stage tech, what are the tech trends, and like seeing how that fits in. So you get this 30-page like dossier, as we call it, on everything about the project, like competitors, information on the founders, TAM. It also predicts valuation. Like if I could show you the report, it's actually very robust. And most founders I show are like, wait, I kind of want to run my project through that and use this to like help, you know, give me advice. But so we also have like diligence questions. So we have like 30 or 40 diligence questions that kind of come out of that report. And then really from there, members can read that report and like swipe right or left, depending on like Tinder style, whether or not they like the report or not, or like the project. They can also contribute their notes on it. They can ask questions to a bot to learn a little bit more and have a more dynamic experience to learn about the project. What's also really fun about this format for how to invest is the actual deals that are coming in through Aiden are going to be through a network of like 1,000 to 2,000 people that we're going to build that can submit deals to Aiden. And by submitting deals, it's really just providing a deck or a website and the ability to like introduce the founder to like us at Tribute Labs to then make the investment should everyone want to make the investment. But like what's extra sweet about that is if you do contribute a deal and Aiden ends up investing, you get 10% of the carry. So that's like kind of insane economics for someone to just submit a website and a deal. And so that's, I think like that's where structurally this is a little bit different than like closed system. Anyone can pull in a website or deck, have a report, and then have the members and the LPs of this vehicle swipe right or left. And so I think that's going to be a game changer. Like I actually think this could change venture capital if we can really get the best deal flow on the internet through Aiden. The best projects will get funded, and so that's kind of like the core idea. I'm happy to talk about it and go deeper on any of it.
So I saw a demo of this in New York a couple weeks ago. Report is super impressive, but the question that I asked Aaron, and I think he misinterpreted, was just, I'm curious what stage you think this fits in. Like, is this first money in? Is that going to work, or is this actually better suited to teams that have more information on the internet or in a more understood area? Maybe there is a market map created already. What's your thinking there?
Yeah, we've put a lot of different types of projects into it. I would say like, we could put the company website in, and you can get a pretty, depending on, the website, you can get a pretty good report. It also shares, like, if you can kind of tell when there's not enough information on the website, like it will let you know. But that said, the more information, the better. So like if you have the deck plus the website, deck plus Notion, deck plus blog post, like anything you can give it, obviously you're going to get higher fidelity report. But just a website tends to work. As far as like the stage of company, we've put like pre-seed, no one knows about it, just the deck in, and you get like a pretty strong report, in my opinion. We've also actually tried like, mid-stage private equity firms. So like I've talked to friends in private equity, put their, private equity portfolio companies, and they actually have more data points, like because Aiden can predict a valuation. Like I'll be like, hey, does this valuation like line up with what you invested in? And they're like, yes, it's actually in that range. Even the diligence questions, like they've looked through and they're like, wow, these are really nuanced, thoughtful diligence questions that aren't just like, what's your ARR? It's actually deeply talking about the business, and it has context that like we would, as an investor, would never know. They can like pull from context elsewhere. So I think to your question, I think for the purposes of Aiden, it's going to be more early stage companies like pre-seed, seed, Series A. But like I think there's a potential for something like Aiden to work in later stage private equity or public companies eventually too.
Do you see there being kind of like an embedded selection bias in this, where like the types of founders that are attracted to kind of this like AI deck submission process are the ones that just maybe can't raise from, I don't know, more prominent firms or something? Or like how do you avoid that? And I'm curious also, because so much of investing is convincing founders to take your money, and often the best deals are, there are many people
that is early stage investing. That is
early
Yeah,
stage investing. So how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So every founder, I've talked to really good founders about this, and they like look at it and like, wait, I kind of want to run my project through this. This is amazing. And so I think, and this is kind of like what we're going to do next after we launch Aiden, is we're going to spend a lot of time on founder tools. Like we're going to really spend I think it's going to be highly value additive. So not only will we give them a report, but like you could imagine being an early stage founder, first time founder, and you can kind of, look at it and like, how do I improve my company? Maybe it's having a specific hire that would make me more attractive. Maybe I should hire, the next 3 hires should be a go-to-market person and an engineer and XYZ, like whatever. So I think like making recommendations, giving feedback on decks that's like super specific, that makes that, founder more attractive. Maybe it's having help with your go-to-market strategy and like putting your go-to-market strategy in and seeing whether or not it's feasible or having alternatives. Like we definitely want to start thinking about that. And honestly, most founders, especially in emergent tech, which is, I've talked to AI founders, like nothing to do with crypto, but crypto, AI, like even the biotech longevity people, they are kind of interested in this. Like, I think just innately being like a little, they find like the newness of this and like the appeal of this to actually be a differentiator compared to your like traditional venture fund. So like it's kind of like the DAOs. Like we've done this with the DAOs where it's like many of the founders actually just like the idea of this community coming together, and it hasn't previously been like an issue. But to your point, maybe some founders, like some of the big funds, they just take up full rounds, and that is what it is also for some of these companies. So
regardless. I mean, I feel like you're making an argument for novelty there, which I fully agree with. I think this will be interesting through that lens. I think, like the two open questions I have, just obviously we've been thinking deeply about this space generally, is just like, where is consensus-based decision making a good way to invest? And I think the jury is very much out on that. And then the second one is, why would I take your money? And I think the big argument for why I would take your money today is the halo effect from the brand, the platform, and or specific relationships. And again, I think DAOs have fallen down here. I don't know if DAOs in their current state are seen as actively supportive of founders in the way that other funds are. I think at least that's what I hear and I think have experienced. And so I think the idea that AI could be the superpower to solve that, I think is something I very much agree with. And I think we've talked a lot about Scott Belsky's Cognicos and sort of like the mental framework there. And I think that's super interesting. But my gut is that like empowering individuals to go make those choices and commit themselves to supporting those teams is going to be the thing that's actually truly compelling to these founders, especially at the early stages. Or you kind of end up in a place where it's like, well, of course I should submit it here, and I'm going to get some percentage of those deals done because they're maybe not as interesting or not as hot or not. And then on the consensus piece, I think it comes out to this idea of like, how do you, like, if something is net new and has the potential to be super valuable, are we able to actually capture that with our current sort of frameworks and thinking? And, I mean, I think the answer is probably yes to that, but I just don't know how far away that is, or if that's today.
I mean, honestly, I've put some very emergent, very odd emergent projects into it, and you get like a pretty fair read. And what's interesting about this is, like, of course, you get that like dossier, and I wish I could show you guys. Maybe like we're gonna start previewing this stuff over time, but like the dossier is pretty, it's actually like, I would say this is like less consensus driven because it's not like the human emotion of it. It's actually more objective in certain ways. So you have that dossier, it's a flat report. But then what's interesting is like then the agents are all crawling this report and then they come up with their own opinions. And like it's not like it's 100% or 0% all the time. Like you have 2 out of 5 or 1 out of 5 that might be interested in the project. And so I think in a way you get that non-consensus. And right now, like, we have 5 agents, but there's no preventing us from creating like 20 or 30 agents to really like give total diverse opinions.
I think that like the idea of that, I mean, that alone just to see where, because everybody comes in with their own biases and things that we're ignorant of. And I think to me one of the most compelling use cases for AI is just being a thought partner, seeing where those gaps exist. And so if you can productize that or institutionalize it and extend on it, I think that even if it's just purely used to better inform those who are making the swiping left or right decisions, you kind of get, I guess, more nuance around it. Interesting. I'm curious, like, so what is your, like, is the plan to go raise a new DAO/fund for this? Or are you trying to, and then is the goal to like allow other people to go do it? Or are you going to be the brand behind it? Like, how are you guys thinking about?
It's a good question. I think so I think we want to like we need to take it to market. I think we need to see how it goes. I think we're going to launch this for similar to the DAOs, which is like you kind of open it, you fill out the accreditation, and people, can join if they'd like. And so we'll probably go live with that in a couple weeks. I think the minimum contribution will probably be like somewhere between 50 to 100,000. I think we're even still talking to people and seeing what, is appealing to them. And then ideally the fund size is 10 to 15. Like we don't want to go crazy. I think again, like we just want to see how this goes. And so, there's going to be a lot there. And we're going to learn a ton, I think, also from the members. And so, I think building out the network is going to be key in this too, of people who are submitting the deals. So I think phase 1 is like getting the capital in. And then phase 2 is like helping build out the network. I've talked to a ton of people, and I think there's also people that I just like know from the internet. We all know that like would be great. They're not active on Twitter. Like I've seen this in the DAO. Like there's plenty of people who are very online, very, highly networked that are not like on Twitter all day. And, they're not tweeting. Like they're just around and they're super smart. And, I think that like that is like the ideal person. They write angel checks sometimes, but sometimes they're just talking to founders for fun. And so we know plenty of people like that. I think that there's just a lot of people that would be attracted to this that, you know,
Oh yeah, I don't
are like
expect you to have a hard time filling
Yeah.
out that, and I think keeping it small is very smart.
Yeah.
For it. On the fee side, so I find a great project. I drop it in super easy. I get 10% of the carry. Is that right? And
Mhm.
is this like the idea this will be a 2 and 20 style model, and so therefore I'm getting about 2% of the potential value that the DAO gets back, or am I getting like half of the carry?
Yeah. So it's, you know, most funds are 2 and 20, so it's like a 2% management fee and then 20% carry. So like any profits made kind of go back to that general partner. In this kind of structure, we're like the limited general partner is actually going to be Tribute Labs. We're taking 1%, so it's going to be half the normal, you know, general partner management fee, which honestly, ideally, we get it to 0 over time, but like that, you know, it's
Yeah.
starting at 1. And then the 20% carry that would usually would go to it would, you know, 10% would go to Tribute Labs, 10% would go to the deal originator. And I mean, that's pretty significant. So like you can imagine if
Mhm.
there's like a $10 million profit on some, you know, XYZ investment, $1 million would go to that deal originator. Which
Okay, so it's
that's
half the carry.
It's half the carry.
yeah,
Wow, nice.
yeah.
Is that
And so
compelling to your members that I'm putting up money and only getting
well, they're going to
a
still
10?
get the 80%. It's actually a cut to
Oh, to you,
Tribute,
right?
right?
Sorry, obviously,
Yeah,
yeah. So okay, to you, right?
yeah. So it's actually something that we're giving away because I think that's fair, right? Like we're democratizing the deal flow of it. So, you know, if we do that, and I actually think that like the economics of that make it really appealing to people to contribute deals. Like I think that's pretty competitive. Actually, I
Oh
don't think most
yeah,
venture analysts like have that kind of exposure
they don't.
to
They
their
definitely
fund.
don't. I mean, you're going to have the bots speed run this for you. Like
Well,
that's going to
that's
be
why
the
we're gonna have a
compelling thing.
curated. That's why we're gonna have a curated network of people who do it because like you can't open this up.
Curated bots. Okay, so
Slash
yeah, so
people
you
if
go,
they just
yeah.
repeatedly share deals.
Yeah, I also I'm thinking like it's like if you don't participate or if you're just like kind of maybe there should be some sort of like annual cull or something. I don't know. I'm speaking out of turn. We're going to see how it goes, but like maybe you can kind of refine that over time.
I mean, some reputation system probably emerges from this at some point.
Yeah, yeah, we've thought about that.
I'm curious quickly if you could talk about just like the tech stack behind this. You know, you mentioned working on this for a few years. I imagine the build out wasn't super easy. Like this isn't just a wrapper on GPT or something. So I'm curious if you could share as much as you're able to share on what this looks like on the
Yeah,
hood.
that's the kind of thing that, you know, Aaron has spent nights and weekends really grinding away at this. And so I would encourage you guys to have him on to talk about that.
We tried Pri, and he sent you.
I know. He wants to come, but I feel like that's very much like his domain. I want him to share what he can of that.
Yeah, my sense in asking the summer question was that there has just been this constant using the and searching for the latest greatest model for the specific use case and the blending of some of those throughout. So yeah, it was interesting that there's sort of a bit of an AI workshop, I guess, at USV a couple of weeks ago, and the most interesting thing was just like what are people's current what do people believe? Who do people believe are the current best at X, right? From a model perspective or a tech stack
Yeah, that was
perspective. And
interesting to hear. I mean, like our view is like OpenAI is the best at reasoning.
that's what I hear. Yes, and now
Yeah,
maybe I think images might have been a different thing. Or coding for sure is one
coding
that
I
sort
think
of
is like
lives in
Claude,
a
right?
Claude thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I don't know. I was looking at the poly market around who's going to have the best model by the end of March, and like Google just goes
Google.
boom, and I'm like, what the hell so
I'm
is that
confused
real?
by that.
Me too.
Yeah.
I tried to find what like, but I guess it's just some leaderboard, and maybe they just moved up the leaderboard in some interesting way. So I don't know. Yeah, so I think this is super interesting. And my sense is we are, you know, both of our interests have been around sort of like the disruption or the recreation of sort of a better, more favorable to human beings venture capital markets, right? The idea
Yeah.
that you can open up the number of people who can come in and that you can start to compete with these large firms or these, you know, that are closed off, and the idea of community and I think, you know, one of the places where we may have gone in slightly different directions is the idea of like, do you need to use money to buy in, or can you use your attention and belief, et cetera? And I think for me, that's like the interesting part. I think the and like an impactful thing to sort of for society and for like individuals to, you know, move up the economic ladder. And then also like, but I'm just so deeply fascinated with how we're going to pull in this sort of cognition and AI tools to actually like accelerate that. And for listening to people talk about even just the early experiments you guys are doing at Tribute, even just purely on the operational side, it's very, very clear there's a massive opportunity there.
I know. I think we finally make DAOs autonomous, which is, I think, going to be great and much needed. I mean, I was even thinking, like, because we did some experiments over even like post-COVID or over COVID where we wanted to do like service guilds, and like we created this like DAO that was for people to basically like get web design help. And you could imagine, and it was very like we had a lot of humans involved. Like we were tasking people to do certain design things. Like you could imagine a world where a bunch of designers come in, they have an AI, based on their expertise, like task them with different, and based on knowing what they're working on, like tasking them with different things, reminding them on deadlines, and like you could just automate that and create like a truly like you could create a DAO, but it's also just completely operationalized by AI. Because that was like the issues that we faced with like that service DAO is just like, okay, very difficult to do this. You constantly to stay on top of people and like have a manager. You don't really need to do that as much anymore. And so I don't know, dude. I think the next like 5 years are going to be insane. I think AI.
What gives you that insight, Pri? That everything's so calm right now. You're betting that it's going to be crazier in 5 years. How dare you?
Well, I mean, there's some. I mean, this is a totally separate conversation, but I mean, I worry about like what the world will look like as far as like general employment and like what people will do. I'm not a doomer because I definitely want robots doing my laundry, but I do think that things are going to be totally different. And they already are, but it feels like significant. So like even financing venture, like I think you and I have been talking about this, and we came from it from like the crypto lens, but like when you think about the real Web3 and how the internet's going to change, it's like crypto, AI, robotics, like all of AR, VR, like all of these emergent tech is just basically internet 2.0 or 3.0. And so yeah, I'm excited.
We've got internet. What are we? We're at 6G. That's what we're calling it.
We need more G's.
Yeah, we need more G's for sure.
Can we get your take on just like the cultural implications of all like the image generation stuff and the Ghiblification and everything that's happening right now? Because I don't know. I think you're a bit of a cultural connoisseur. If I read your Telegram channel properly.
Oh yeah. I love shout out to my Telegram channel.
It's good.
Yes, it's funny, we just did a Net Society recording and like the whole podcast we were talking about this. So we talked about it for like an hour. I understand like, it becomes a little stale when you're scrolling through your Twitter feed and you're seeing the same version of the image. And I understand why there's like a level of fatigue over one day. Like it's almost like it was popular for a day and like the hype cycle lasted almost 24 hours. And I definitely feel like that is downstream from crypto culture. Like we are very familiar with that, but like I don't, and I think some of the TikTok Zers are pretty familiar with that. But the fact that this trend was literally like 20 hours is insane. That said, we were chatting a little bit about it there, and I kind of thought it was like a beautiful moment for the internet. It was like this decentralized, prompt engineering experiment where everyone like decided to come together and use a prompt and share it across like every social media platform. And to me, it felt it felt like a binding moment. I don't like care per se about the actual aesthetic of it, but I think we're going to see more and more of just decentralized prompting. And part of me is like, maybe it's going to lead to different marketing psyops or something where it's like, there's going to be, a company that's going to try to like weave in some sort of prompt of the internet is just like prompting the same thing. But anyways, I'm rambling. I thought it was actually great. Like it's like kind of the JD Vance meme was like the first time I saw AI transcend into like normos, and I was like, okay, AI is gonna like hit through memes, especially after the JD Vance one, but this is like another level. And I think we're just gonna see more and more of it. I think it's like pretty promising for creative AI.
Love
there's a lot of fear around it, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of the extreme edges of takes are what propel that forward in a way. But if there wasn't the sort of critique of it at the same time as the creation, it wouldn't have been as popular. So I'm not sure that is generally good, but maybe it's the world that we live in.
Yeah.
All right, Pri, let's leave it there. Thanks for hanging out. Let's get that link back up here, piece. ADIN. I always try to spell it like my Yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested in like being a part of the network to contribute deals or whatever, want to learn more, like I'm happy to talk to anyone.
Amazing. Thanks for hanging out, Pri. Good luck.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Peace.
Ciao.
All right. Yeah, I think this is. I mean, that is a meaningful carry share, and so I was
That's
reading
crazy.
that incorrect before, and
Yeah,
so
that's a lot.
that's super strong, and I think it's gonna be very, very compelling for folks, and also gets at that idea of like, okay, maybe you don't have money, but you have a network, and now you can come in and start to make some money. So what is going on here?
Isn't this crazy?
It's sick. It made Jess look a little old, but
Yeah.
Yo, what the?
it looks like I'm talking to my grandpa or something.
Jesus Christ, is that how you see us? Oh my God. Do I look that? I thought I had a baby face. Yeah, I'm older. I get it. But fucking grandpa. And
Also,
Chris
Pete,
look
what it
like
did to your what it did to your puppet is sick.
It's so awesome.
Oh my God. You gotta
Yeah.
put that up on Zora, I guess.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
good
yeah, I meant that.
stuff.
Yeah,
That's sick.
I think you gotta. Is there?
I love what it does to the tweets too, honestly.
Who shared this?
Matthew
Matthew
Fox himself.
He's so good.
He's great. Yeah.
Mint it, Matthew. I'll buy it. Do you have any? What else is on our list that's interesting? I mean, I think like this idea of DAOs 2.0 is just very, very interesting to me, and I think like a lot of my critiques of DAOs today is sort of the value that they maybe offer founders and maybe like the decision-making processes they go through and like the support of founders. Like I think it would be wrong to bet against AI being able to, meaningfully solve a bunch of those. That said, and maybe this is just our experience, like when you're in these early stage deals and you're sitting across from somebody who's, got a big vision and is incredibly focused and is looking for partners to go do a thing,
Yeah.
that human connection seems to be such a huge part of it. And so I don't think that
Well,
goes
also-
away, but I think we're just seeing an extension.
Well, also the like decision making at the earliest stages just needs to be a bet on like the relentlessness and resourcefulness of the person, right? Like so many of the great outcomes of the internet have all been pivots. So
Most
like
of them, yeah.
doing a market analysis or anything beyond like, is this person going to go build something big and crazy? You're gonna miss good stuff. So
what was that frame that Nicholas shared the other day? Was the most evil AI ever? Like I was on Farcaster. And
it would like analyze your social activity and just rip you apart.
Did you guys do that?
Yeah, it was too real, and also like
Yeah.
I'm gonna knife them if I ever see that AI somewhere.
Totally.
So
Totally.
Yeah, trauma AI, I think is what we're calling it. It
Right,
basically just calls out like, oh, your worst, the worst framing of your sort of how you show up on the internet as social or as personal traits. But I think like you could imagine this very much, the question of like, can you judge a founder in some way? It's like, what are we going to have big 5 personality tests run on your social content for a while and sort of making a judgment on the human being there? And is that ultimately going to be more effective? Like, are we able to use math to identify great founders? It seems like a stretch to me, but God, maybe not. Maybe not. And I think, a world where this exists, you have hopefully just more capital flowing to early builders. And I'm about that. So, all right. What is this? This is our lightning round here. Nikita joins Solana.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, right? Like, who's going to go pull Nikita Vera into building crypto? And the man is obviously incredibly effective at building compelling apps, things that people want to come and join. I made a bit of a comment, wondering if he's ever built a business, though, and I don't think that's true. So maybe that's the distinction to make here. But clearly, being able to grow users, build sticky apps is going to be a huge opportunity. That's one that we're very excited about, and this guy seems to be the best in the business. So I'm super eager to see what comes out.
Agree.
Josh typing away, doing something instead of talking to me right now.
I'm just tweeting.
All right, we're done. We don't even need to talk to Josh anymore.
No, I think the reason this Nikita thing's huge is I just firmly believe that all the tools are here. We just have a severe distribution problem, and he's the king of it. And getting some more. I had a great chat with my grandfather. getting some more.
So you're not talking to me, and then you're throwing shade at me on Twitter. I don't even.
I think it's a great hire, and whatever teams get to work with him,
Oh my god,
I think are going to be incredibly lucky. I think it's crazy how the UX continues to be, how bad crypto is at marketing, how bad we are at targeting anyone that's not on crypto Twitter. So I think
and just not being honest about the state of all of those things. And I think if I've never met Nikita, but the dude really comes at you with some truth bombs around building and the effectiveness of certain mechanics and where you should innovate and where you shouldn't innovate. And
what do you think that deal looked like?
Here's a truckload of tokens. Would you like them? That's how that deal looks. I don't think there's much more. I mean, they might have some sort of outcomes around it, but I mean, I think this is like, there's a bigger conversation here around the idea of centralization versus decentralization, and the ability for the Solana Foundation to take a very opinionated approach to bringing in talent to support their builders is, indicative of a wider trend that we're seeing with a lot of other projects as well. But those Ethereum's not out here doing these sort of deals, and maybe that's an issue. I don't know. We'll see. All right. There's so much. I felt like today there was a whole bunch of news that came out. Next week I want to talk about Farcaster airdrops, because I keep getting them, and I'm less and less interested in looking at them.
Do you? I'm not getting any. How are you getting all these airdrops?
Well, I don't like take cheap shots at co-hosts on the internet, and so maybe Farcaster algorithm recognizes
honestly,
that.
Farcaster is getting like increasingly cool.
100%.
I think it's in a really good spot right now.
I think Open Social is going to have a moment. I think Stanley was out tweeting this week about Lens Chain and their whole new thing, so they're going to take another run at it. And I think that stuff's coming out, and I think it is actually shifting a lot of like our thinking on product and where value lies, and the ability to sort of build on these networks. But at the same time, I think there's a big risk that there's notification burnout over on that app if we aren't sending compelling things. And so there has to be so there's interesting things to talk about there. We also had Galaxy Digital get a $200 million settlement from the SEC for their involvement in Luna, which unfortunately paints them in a very negative light, promoting the token while dumping on retail. 200 million, probably good for them to have it behind them, but definitely a sting, I think. And a whole bunch of other interesting things I think bubbling up at the end of this week. So I'm assuming next week is going to be fascinating. We're back here Fridays 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. You can subscribe to this on Spotify. Dude, I cannot tell you how angry and disappointed I am at Apple right now for breaking the one thing that I really want, which is to be able to open up my podcast app and hit play and have the podcast play.
What does it do?
It can't do it right now.
Okay.
It just loads forever. It won't even do anything. I can't even ask Siri. Hey Siri, play a podcast. Again, one of the most used features I use. I'm a very simple man. I want to listen to podcasts. I want to be able to trigger them when I'm driving. It says I don't have the app installed. This thing is cooked. It's cooked.
Brutal.
And so there's also a lot of people talking about the opening in the market for a new phone, a new version of a phone. And so I get excited as we sort of see these things that just feel like they are embedded in our reality and they're going to exist forever. And then you start to see these little gaps in the world. They're like, well, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something.
Network effects are great until they start unwinding, and then they get very ugly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was through the end of like bundling and unbundling, and somebody was sort of saying that the iPhone is like the epitome of bundling, and what comes after. It was Jared at USV who was tweeting.
Are we unbundling the phone again? We're gonna carry cameras around and.
I mean, I think there's a good argument to be made that there's probably that some AI use cases might do it. I mean, you've seen some early examples, so yeah, maybe. Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I guess we'll see what next week brings. Never a dull moment on this new Internet 3.75. It's going to be a good one.
Hopefully, some green.
Yeah. Yeah,
no promises.
No promise. Markets, this increasing uncertainty is going to be great for the markets. I think is over out there.
We're gonna get tariffs, and we're gonna not have tariffs again next week.
Well,
are we
I
gonna have
do-
tariffs again? We might have tariffs again. But maybe not.
There was a great Ansem tweet that was like, the government, we're planning a recession. The market, we're buying fart coin. Where it's like, yeah, it's so true. It's like,
Oh, that's good.
yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, we're back next Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for hanging out with us. Shout out to Matthew Fox for making me an old man on the internet. Love you deeply. Thanks for furthering that, Josh. That's great. I love that too. Are you even old enough to be working for us in that picture? Like, you do have a little baby
compliment.
here. Yeah. Oh, actually, this one that C Club account shared is much more favorable for all of us. So I come off as plumper in AI.
That one, you're
Always.
plumper
Like,
in that-
I'm
you're plumper
always
in that one.
plumper in AI.
Things are
I like it.
plumper in the
Do you want
Studio
plumpness
Ghibli world.
or age? Which one's better? Would you
I'll
rather
take
be older or
plumpness.
plumper?
I know that's more
Yeah,
aspirational. I'm trying to gain some weight here, so might as well.
sure. Bulk season.
But what? So AI adds 10 pounds? Is that the
Justin
idea?
Ghibli.
Only for me.
It's
Just to you. Just to you.
Goodness. No, I'm definitely plumper in this.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're a Muppet in both, man. So
I know. God, I love what it did to the logo. This is so pretty.
Yeah, that's good.
It's
All right, let's leave it
backwards,
there.
but yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us today, y'all, and we'll see you on chain.
Internet is